Joining us now, Flynn attorney Sidney Powell, along with Fox News legal analyst Greg Jarrett and Fox News contributor Sarah Carter. All right, let's start with so many layers to the onion peel here. Sidney, I want to start with you, and I want to start with General Flynn, because General Flynn, you have both sides. They said the case is over. Why do you now have to go to the D.C. Circuit? And what's wrong with Emmet Sullivan, his honor?
I wish I knew what was going on with Judge Sullivan. I can't say that I do, other than he has gone way out into left field by himself, as we say in our mandamus petition, on this notion that he can appoint an amicus for himself and solicit other amicus briefs and not rule on our motion, on the government's motion to dismiss, which we consented to. The law is clear. There's a new Supreme Court decision unanimously decided just within the last 2 weeks that makes it clear he cannot invite the amicus briefs that he has. He doesn't have that authority as a district court judge. And then there are Supreme Court and D.C. Circuit cases that make clear he must grant the motion to dismiss that the government made. It's a case and controversy issue under the Constitution, a separation of powers issue under the Constitution, and the law is clear. He doesn't have authority to grant it. He can't appoint a prosecutor himself. The case is over, and his bias is so egregious he should be removed from the case.
Sarah, 15 days after the infamous January 5th meeting on Inauguration Day for Donald Trump, Susan Rice goes into, the office, writes a note to herself, memorializing the meeting from 15 days earlier. Do everything by the book. She said it 3 separate times based on tonight's breaking news and the letter being released. So my question is, why didn't she write it sooner? My other question is, why did she feel a compulsion to do that if she wasn't nervous on some level? And by the way, we already know she's a known liar because she went on 5 Sunday shows and lied about Benghazi.
That's right. I mean, we already know she's established that fact with Benghazi, and I was going to say it if you didn't, Sean. I think what's important here is that, remember, it was on the 4th of January that the FBI issued that memorandum stating, FBI agents stating they found absolutely no derogatory information on General Flynn whatsoever, nor on anyone in his surrounding people that he was with at the time. So they wanted to drop the entire case on General Flynn. Then it was on January 5th that they go to the Oval Office and have this meeting with these senior officials. John Brennan was there, Vice President Joe Biden, President Obama, Comey, Susan Rice. And she then on the 20th, on the last day of office, she writes this email, this CYA to herself. And you have to ask yourself, in the recently declassified part of that email by Rick Grinnell, thank goodness he did that. It exposes Comey and what he was saying to President Obama and telling President Obama basically, look, we're not going to share all this information with the Trump administration nor anyone because we have these concerns about General Flynn. Now, we know now, based on the January 4th memo, there should have been no concerns about Flynn. There was no derogatory information. And this all centers on President Obama, Sean. Let me tell you, it centers on President Obama, who expanded all the rules for unmasking and for accessing intelligence. Remember, we broke that on your show, May 2017. We broke that on your show, and it was in December 2016 when he expanded and the Obama administration went haywire with unmaskings and with gathering of intelligence.
Let's look at the unmasking issues. Both Sarah, Greg, John Solomon, myself, at different times, we were all getting reports about varying people being unmasked. And to be very blunt with our audience, because we don't lie, we were told by people ourselves. Sarah, I know you remember. Greg, I think you remember. I know John Solomon remembers that we may have been unmasked. Wasn't that nice of them to think of us that way, Greg Jarrett? But this unmasking scandal, they're going after the Trump family. I want to know every single person they unmasked. There was a 300% increase. I want to know who they are, why and who.
I think anybody associated with Donald Trump was being monitored or surveilled or spied on and unmasked. And in a lot of instances, they already knew who the individual was on the tape-recorded, secretly surveilled transcripts, because oftentimes the content tells you exactly who it is, especially in the Flynn case. So, I think what we're going to find out is a lot of people who had no business trying to unmask individuals who were incidentally collected on surveillance was massive, and that the surveillance itself of anybody associated with Donald Trump was massive. And that January 5th meeting was pivotal. The whole gang of misanthropes were there. Comey, Clapper, Brennan. There was an effort there and a decision made. Let's further target General Michael Flynn. And, now, of course, we have a federal judge who, as I predicted last week, Sidney was going to have to file a writ of mandamus to get him kicked off the case and have a higher court tell him to follow the law, because the law is clear. When the prosecution decides to drop a case, it is not subject to judicial review. This judge wants to step off the bench, take off his robe, and act as a prosecutor, a clear violation of the separation of powers. If a judge doesn't like the decision to drop a case, too bad. He cannot countermand it. That's the law.
What about the impeachment of the president in perpetuity? Quick comment from everybody. Oh, so now we argue to the Supreme Court, Sidney. We're just going to never stop our impeachment proceedings. We'll act as though we got a conviction in the Senate. My reading of the rule of law and Constitution does not allow that.
No, it shouldn't be allowed at all. It should be shut down to begin with. It's just another atrocity by the Dems, who will make up anything they can to try to destroy this president and the people around him, and they don't care who they hurt in the process. It's appalling.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Greg?
Sean, they're also, yes, and they're also trying to protect themselves.
Well,
These rats are trying to
as long
jump
as Trump
ship.
is in office, there will be an investigation in search of a crime, impeachment in perpetuity, because the Democrats know they can't beat Trump at the polls, so they'll do anything by hook or by
there's
crook
one answer.
to get rid of it.
We could end all of this, and that is in 178 days, the American people, you're the jury. You get to have the final say. I hope you choose wisely. The entire republic depends on it. It's that serious. We'll live free or die. It's the name of my new book coming out. All right. Thank you all.